When Michael Rodriguez returned to his marina slip the August evening, he expected to find his prized 40-foot yacht exactly where he'd left it. Instead, he discovered 20 strangers partying on his deck, his expensive sound system blasting music across the harbor, and his boat slowly drifting toward the open Atlantic. What happened next would tear apart a family, expose a web of lies, and land everyone involved in a courtroom battle that would shock the entire boating community. This is the true story of betrayal on the high seas. Michael Rodriguez had worked 16-hour days for 3 years to afford his dream boat. The 2019 Sea Ray Sundancer wasn't just a vessel, it was his sanctuary, his retirement plan, and the symbol of everything he'd sacrificed to build his marine construction business in Fort Lauderdale. Every weekend, he'd escape to the pristine waters of Biscayne Bay, leaving behind the stress of managing a 20-person crew and the constant pressure of bidding on million-dollar marina projects. On August 15, 2023, Michael had planned a quiet solo trip to decompress after landing the biggest contract of his career, complete rebuild of the Coral Gables Yacht Club Marina. But at the last minute, his daughter Emma called. Her college roommate was getting married in Orlando, and she desperately needed to attend. Being a devoted father, Michael handed over his car keys and decided to postpone his trip until Sunday. That decision would haunt him for months. Karen Winters, Michael's sister-in-law, had always harbored resentment toward her brother-in-law's success. While Michael's construction business thrived, Karen struggled to make ends meet as a part-time yoga instructor. She'd made countless passive-aggressive comments about his fancy boat during family gatherings, always followed by a bitter laugh and the phrase, "must be nice." What Michael didn't know was that Karen had been watching his routine for weeks. She knew about his slip number at Bayfront Marina, had observed his weekend patterns, and had even befriended the marina's security guard, Jimmy Castellanos, a 60-year-old retiree who worked nights and enjoyed Karen's homemade cookies and flirtatious attention. That Saturday evening, as Michael settled into his home office to review blueprints, Karen was texting her two sisters, Monica and Rebecca, along with 17 of her closest friends. The message was simple: Michael's not using the boat this weekend. Time for some payback. Party starts at sunset. Karen had convinced herself that she deserved this moment. After all, hadn't she helped Michael's wife Sarah through her cancer treatments 2 years ago? Hadn't she been there for every family crisis? In her twisted logic, one night on his precious boat was fair compensation for years of feeling overlooked and financially inferior. The group arrived at the marina just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Jimmy Castellanos, charmed by Karen's earlier visits and convinced she had Michael's permission, waved them through the gate without checking the guest list. Karen had even brought him a thermos of Irish coffee, laced with enough whiskey to cloud his judgment. Within an hour, Michael's meticulously maintained yacht had been transformed into a floating nightclub. Karen's friends cranked his premium sound system to maximum volume, spilled wine on his Italian leather seating, and used his emergency flares as party decorations. Monica discovered his liquor cabinet and began mixing cocktails for everyone, while Rebecca live-streamed the entire event on Instagram, tagging it with #LivingMyBestLife and #BoatPartyVibes. But Karen's crowning act of rebellion was yet to come. Around 10 p.m., emboldened by champagne and years of suppressed jealousy, she decided that Michael's boat was too close to shore for a proper party. She wanted to drift out into the bay to feel the freedom of the open water that her brother-in-law enjoyed every weekend. What Karen didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that Michael's boat was equipped with state-of-the-art GPS tracking, security cameras, and an emergency beacon system. Every movement, every action, every word spoken on deck was being recorded and transmitted to Michael's phone in real time. Michael was reviewing structural engineering reports when his phone began buzzing with security alerts. The first notification showed his boat's GPS coordinates changing. The second revealed his sound system operating at dangerous volume levels. The third was a live video feed of strangers dancing on his deck, his hands trembling with rage and disbelief. Michael watched as Karen stumbled toward his dock lines, clearly intoxicated, and began untying the ropes that secured his $250,000 investment to the mariner. In the background, her friends cheered and applauded, completely unaware that they were now aboard an untethered vessel drifting toward one of the busiest shipping channels on the eastern seaboard. Michael immediately called the Coast Guard, then jumped into his truck and raced toward the marina. By the time he arrived 20 minutes later, his boat was already 200 yards from shore, spinning lazily in the current while 20 panicked people screamed for help from the deck. The Coast Guard rescue took 3 hours and required 2 vessels and a helicopter. Karen's sister Monica had to be treated for alcohol poisoning. 2 guests jumped overboard in panic and nearly drowned before being pulled to safety. The entire incident was captured by news helicopters and broadcast live on every local television station. But the real nightmare was just beginning. As Michael stood on the dock, watching Coast Guard officers escort his intoxicated sister-in-law toward a waiting police car, Karen turned and screamed loud enough for every reporter to hear. "He tried to kill us." Michael Rodriguez deliberately cut those lines and tried to murder 20 innocent people. The accusation hit Michael like a physical blow. Within hours, Karen's lie had spread across social media, transforming him from victim to villain. His business phone rang constantly with reporters and potential clients demanding explanations. The Coral Gables Yacht Club, concerned about negative publicity, quietly suspended contract negotiations pending resolution of legal matters. 3 days later, Michael opened his front door to find Detective Lisa Morales holding an arrest warrant. The charges were staggering: 20 counts of attempted murder, reckless endangerment, criminal mischief, and conspiracy to commit maritime terrorism. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Michael realized that Karen's petty jealousy had evolved into something far more sinister. She wasn't just trying to embarrass him anymore. She was trying to destroy his entire life, and she was just getting started. The Broward County Jail wasn't designed for successful businessmen who'd never received so much as a speeding ticket. Michael's first night in custody was a nightmare of fluorescent lights, concrete walls, and the constant knowledge that somewhere in the world, people believed he was a would-be mass murderer. His wife Sarah arrived at his arraignment with their life savings converted to cash for bail. Her face was pale and drawn. Aged 10 years in the 3 days since his arrest, the phone hasn't stopped ringing, she whispered during their brief moment together. Reporters, former clients, Emma's college friends, everyone wants to know if my husband is a killer. Michael's bail was set at $500,000, an amount that would drain their emergency fund and force them to mortgage their home. As he signed the papers, he caught sight of Karen in the gallery, flanked by her sisters, and wearing a neck brace that definitely hadn't been there during the Coast Guard rescue. She was giving interviews to anyone with a camera, describing her near-death experience and Michael's calculated attempt at revenge. The media had transformed Karen from trespasser to survivor. Her story was compelling, a working-class woman nearly murdered by her wealthy, vindictive brother-in-law who couldn't stand the thought of others enjoying his precious yacht. She'd even hired Gloria Steinberg, one of Miami's most prominent personal injury attorneys, who held press conferences describing Michael as a dangerous narcissist who prioritizes property over human life. But Michael had advantages that Karen didn't know about. His marine construction business had required him to install sophisticated security systems on dozens of high-end yachts. And he'd equipped his own boat with the most advanced surveillance technology available. Every camera, every sensor, every GPS coordinate was stored on encrypted servers that not even the FBI could access without proper warrants. His attorney, David Chen, was a former federal prosecutor who specialized in maritime law. During their first meeting, David spread dozens of photographs across his conference table. "Karen's making a crucial mistake," he explained. "She's claiming you deliberately cut the lines to endanger her guests. But if that were true, why would you immediately call the Coast Guard? Why would you rush to the marina to help with the rescue? And most importantly, why would someone planning mass murder install cameras to record his own crime?" The security footage told a devastating story. High-definition video showed Karen arriving at the marina with her entourage, bribing the security guard with alcohol, and systematically violating every posted rule. Audio recordings captured her exact words as she untied the dock lines. "Let's see how Michael likes it when his precious boat goes for a little adventure without him." But the most damning evidence was Karen's own social media activity. In the weeks before the incident, she'd posted dozens of bitter comments about Michael's success, including one particularly revealing Facebook rant. "Some people think they're better than everyone else just because they have nice things. Maybe it's time someone taught them a lesson about sharing." Rebecca's Instagram livestream had captured everything: the deliberate untying of the dock lines, the celebration as the boat drifted away, and most crucially, Karen's own words, "This'll show the arrogant bastard." Let him explain this to his insurance company. David Chen smiled as he reviewed the evidence. Karen thought she was committing the perfect crime. She figured that even if you had cameras, they'd be destroyed when the boat sank or crashed. She never expected the Coast Guard to rescue everyone safely, and she certainly never expected every moment to be preserved in crystal clear detail. The investigation revealed even more disturbing details. Karen had been planning the incident for weeks, researching maritime law to understand the potential charges Michael might face. She'd deliberately chosen a Saturday night when shipping traffic was heaviest, hoping the boat would collide with a cargo vessel and eliminating any possibility of survivors contradicting her story. Monica and Rebecca, initially loyal to their sister, began to waver as the evidence mounted. Monica had been hospitalized with alcohol poisoning and was facing her own legal troubles. Rebecca's employer, a prestigious Miami law firm, had placed her on administrative leave pending resolution of the case. Both women were beginning to realize that Karen's quest for revenge might destroy their own lives. The turning point came when David Chen received a call from Jimmy Castellanos, the marina security guard. Jimmy had been fired immediately after the incident and was facing his own criminal charges for accepting bribes and falsifying guest logs. But he had something that could change everything: his own secret recording device. "I've been working security for 30 years, Jimmy explained during a clandestine meeting at a downtown coffee shop. "You learn to protect yourself by documenting everything. I recorded every conversation I had with Karen, including the ones where she admitted she was planning to get Michael in trouble. The recordings were explosive. Karen's voice, clear and unmistakable, describing her plan to frame the rich asshole for attempted murder. She'd even laughed about how she convinced her sisters to participate, knowing they'd do anything to support her righteous cause. But as David prepared to present this evidence to the prosecutor, Karen's attorney made a shocking announcement. Gloria Steinberg scheduled an emergency press conference and revealed what she claimed was evidence of an even more sinister plot. According to Steinberg, Michael had been planning the incident for months. She produced what appeared to be text messages between Michael and an unknown accomplice, discussing teaching Karen a lesson she'll never forget and making sure she never bothers us again. The messages were timestamped weeks before the boat incident and seemed to show premeditation. The media went into overdrive. If the text messages were authentic, Michael wasn't just defending himself, he was a calculating would-be killer who'd orchestrated the entire scenario to eliminate his problematic sister-in-law. Sarah collapsed in David's office when she saw the headlines. How is this possible? She sobbed. Michael would never. Those messages can't be real. David studied the alleged evidence with growing suspicion. The text messages were too convenient, too perfectly incriminating, but proving they were fabricated would require digital forensic experts and weeks of analysis they didn't have. The trial was scheduled to begin in 10 days. As Michael sat in his study that night, surrounded by legal documents and mounting bills, he realized that Karen had played a much deeper game than anyone had imagined. She wasn't just seeking revenge for perceived slights, she was systematically destroying his life with the precision of a military operation. The real question was whether she was smart enough to have planned this alone, or if someone else was pulling the strings behind her seemingly impulsive act of vandalism. The answer would shock everyone involved, including Karen herself. The Broward County Courthouse buzzed with anticipation as the trial of Michael Rodriguez began on a sweltering Monday morning in October. Outside, protesters held signs reading "Justice for Karen" and "Rich man's justice isn't justice," while court TV trucks lined the street like mechanical vultures waiting for fresh drama. Judge Patricia Vasquez, a no-nonsense veteran of 20 years on the bench, had seen enough high-profile cases to recognize the circus atmosphere. Her first order was to ban all recording devices except for the official court reporter, disappointing dozens of social media influencers who'd hoped to live-stream the proceedings. Prosecutor Amanda Sterling, ambitious and politically astute, had built her opening argument around the fabricated text messages, standing before the jury of 8 women and 4 men. She painted Michael as a calculating killer who'd used his technical expertise to create their perfect murder weapon. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sterling began, her voice carrying the righteous indignation of someone convinced of her cause. The defendant didn't just want to embarrass his sister-in-law. He wanted to eliminate her permanently. These text messages proved that Michael Rodriguez spent weeks planning what he hoped would look like a tragic boating accident. She displayed the alleged messages on a large screen, reading them aloud with dramatic emphasis. "Karen needs to learn her lesson permanently. And after Saturday night, she'll never bother anyone again." The jury listened intently, several members taking detailed notes. But David Chen had spent the weekend preparing a counterattack that would expose the prosecution's case as a house of cards built on fabricated evidence and prosecutorial misconduct. His opening statement was delivered with the quiet confidence of a man holding phrases. "Your Honor, members of the jury, by the end of this trial, you will see that the real criminal in this courtroom isn't my client. It's the person who has systematically lied, fabricated evidence, and perverted our justice system to cover up her own crimes." The first day of testimony featured Karen herself, dressed conservatively in a navy blue suit and speaking in a trembling voice about her near-death experience. She described feeling the boat drift away from shore, the panic, as guests realized they were helpless, and her absolute certainty that Michael had planned every moment of our terror. Under direct examination, Karen was the picture of a traumatized victim. She dabbed her eyes with tissues as she recounted jumping into the dark water to try to swim to shore, only to be pulled back aboard by friends who feared she'd drown in the shipping channel. But David Chen's cross-examination revealed a different Karen entirely. Ms. Winters, he began, consulting his notes with theatrical precision. You testified that you believed you had permission to use Mr. Rodriguez's boat that evening. Can you tell the jury exactly who gave you that permission? Karen's confident demeanor flickered for just a moment. Sarah, my sister Sarah, said it would be fine. But Sarah Rodriguez is here in the courtroom today, and she's prepared to testify under oath that she never gave you any such permission. So I'll ask again, who specifically told you that you could take 20 strangers onto my client's private property? The courtroom fell silent as Karen struggled to respond. It was, we're family. I thought you could take whatever you wanted because you're family, David pressed. Is that why you untied the dock lines, Ms. Winters? Because you thought you owned the boat? I never untied anything, Karen snapped, her victim persona cracking. Michael must have loosened those lines before he left, hoping something exactly like this would happen. David smiled and activated a large monitor. Your Honor, I'd like to present Defense Exhibit A, which is security footage from Mr. Rodriguez's boat, timestamped and authenticated by 3 independent digital forensic experts. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as high-definition video showed Karen, clearly intoxicated, deliberately untying each dock line, while her sister Rebecca filmed the entire process on Instagram. Live audio captured Karen's exact words. This'll teach the arrogant bastard a lesson he'll never forget. Several jury members visibly recoiled. Karen's face flushed crimson as she realized the extent of her own recorded confession. But David wasn't finished. Ms. Winters, you've testified that my client sent threatening text messages about harming you. Are you familiar with a company called Digital Forensics International? Karen's attorney, Gloria Steinberg, objected strenuously. But Judge Vasquez allowed the question. No, I don't know anything about that company. Karen Stammered. David presented a thick folder to the court. DFI is one of the nation's leading experts in detecting fabricated digital communications. They've analyzed the text messages you claim my client sent, and they've reached some very interesting conclusions. The expert testimony that followed was devastating. Dr. James Morrison, a former FBI digital forensics specialist, explained how the text messages had been created using commercially available software designed to generate fake evidence. The metadata showed they'd been created 3 days after the boat incident, not weeks before as claimed. In my professional opinion, Dr. Morrison testified, these messages are sophisticated forgeries, created by someone with significant technical knowledge and access to professional-grade software. The courtroom erupted in whispers and gasps. Judge Vasquez banged her gavel for order as Karen sat frozen at the plaintiff's table, her entire case disintegrating before her eyes. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. David called Rebecca Winters to the stand. Karen's youngest sister had been granted immunity in exchange for her testimony, and her appearance sent Karen into visible panic. Rebecca, David began gently, Did your sister Karen ask you to help her create false evidence against Michael Rodriguez? Rebecca's voice was barely audible. Yes. Can you tell the jury what specifically she asked you to do? She wanted me to use my computer skills to make fake text messages. She said we needed to make sure Michael couldn't turn this around on us. The courtroom fell completely silent as Rebecca continued her testimony. Karen had approached her 2 days after the boat incident, panicked that the security footage would expose her lies. Together, they'd spent hours creating the fabricated text messages, using Rebecca's knowledge of digital graphics from her job with the law firm. Karen kept saying that Michael deserved whatever happened to him. Rebecca testified, tears streaming down her face. She said rich people like him always got away with everything, and this was our chance to make him pay for thinking he was better than us. As Rebecca's testimony concluded, Karen suddenly stood up at the plaintiff's table. "You're lying," she screamed at her sister. "You're all lying to protect him. He tried to kill us." Judge Vasquez ordered bailiffs to restrain Karen as she continued her outburst. "This is all wrong. He's the criminal. He's the one who should be in jail." The dramatic scene was interrupted by a commotion at the back of the courtroom. A man in an expensive suit had entered and was speaking urgently with Prosecutor Sterling. After a brief, heated conversation, Sterling approached the bench. "Your Honor," she said, her face pale with shock, "the state has just received information that may fundamentally change the nature of these proceedings. I request an immediate recess to review this new evidence." Judge Vasquez studied the prosecutor's stricken expression. "How long do you need, Counselor?" 24 hours, Your Honor. Maybe less." As the courtroom cleared, Karen was led away in handcuffs, still screaming about conspiracies and cover-ups. But the man in the expensive suit remained behind, speaking quietly with David Chen and Michael Rodriguez. His name was Detective Raymond Torres, and the file folder he carried contained evidence that would expose a conspiracy far more elaborate and sinister than anyone had imagined. The real mastermind behind Karen's scheme was about to be revealed, and their identity would shock everyone in that courtroom, including Karen herself. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity when proceedings resumed the following morning. Word had leaked that explosive new evidence would be presented, and every seat was filled with reporters, legal observers, and curious spectators who sensed they were about to witness something unprecedented. Judge Vasquez called the court to order with unusual solemnity. "Before we continue with defense testimony, the state has requested permission to present new evidence that has come to light." Ms. Sterling, Prosecutor Amanda Sterling, stood slowly, her confident demeanor from the previous day completely gone. "Your Honor, the state has discovered evidence suggesting that Ms. Winters may have been manipulated by a third party, Detective Torres." Detective Raymond Torres took the stand with the bearing of a man who'd seen every form of human deception in his 25-year career. The file folder he carried contained phone records, financial transactions, and surveillance footage that would rewrite the entire narrative of the case. "Detective Torres," Sterling began, "can you tell the court about your investigation into Karen Winters' financial records?" Torres consulted his notes with the precision of a seasoned investigator. 3 weeks before the boat incident, Ms. Winters received a payment of $25,000 from an offshore account registered to a shell company called Maritime Consulting Solutions. She was told this was an advance payment for consulting services, but our investigation revealed that Maritime Consulting Solutions is owned by Apex Legal Group. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Apex Legal Group was one of Miami's most prestigious law firms, known for representing wealthy clients in high-stakes litigation. Who specifically at Apex Legal Group authorized this payment? Sterling asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. Attorney Gloria Steinberg, who is currently representing Ms. Winters in this case. The courtroom exploded. Gloria Steinberg, who had been sitting at the plaintiff's table, shot to her feet. Your Honor, this is outrageous. I demand an immediate recess to consult with my client. But Judge Vasquez had heard enough. Ms. Steinberg, you will remain seated. Detective Torres, please continue. Torres revealed a conspiracy that had been months in the making. Gloria Steinberg hadn't taken Karen's case out of altruism or belief in her cause. She'd orchestrated the entire scheme as part of a complex insurance fraud designed to bankrupt Michael's construction business and claim his assets. The plan was diabolically clever. Steinberg had been tracking Michael's success through public records and business filings, waiting for the right opportunity to destroy him. When she learned about Karen's resentment toward her brother-in-law, she saw the perfect weapon. Ms. Steinberg approached Karen Winters 2 months before the boat incident, Torres testified. She convinced Karen that Michael had been deliberately excluding her from family financial decisions and that she deserved compensation for years of perceived slights. The $25,000 payment was just the beginning. Steinberg had promised Karen a share of the millions they would extract from Michael through wrongful death lawsuits, insurance claims, and seizure of his business assets. She'd even arranged for the fake text messages to be created by a technology company that specialized in fabricated evidence for high-stakes litigation. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. Detective Torres, Sterling continued, her voice barely steady. Did your investigation reveal any connection between Gloria Steinberg and the defendant, Michael Rodriguez? Torres nodded grimly. 5 years ago, Ms. Steinberg represented Michael Rodriguez's former business partner, David Castellanos, in a lawsuit against Mr. Rodriguez's company. The case was dismissed when evidence showed the Castellanos had been embezzling funds and falsifying contracts. Ms. Steinberg's client was eventually convicted of fraud and sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly clicked into place. Gloria Steinberg hadn't just seen an opportunity for profit, she'd seen a chance for revenge against the man who'd exposed her client's crimes and cost her for millions in fees and reputation. David Castellanos, the convicted embezzler, was Jimmy Castellanos' nephew. Jimmy, the marina security guard who'd been bribed by Karen, had been recruited by his nephew to participate in the scheme. The family connection explained how Steinberg had known Michael's boat schedule and security arrangements. Karen sat stunned. At the plaintiff's table as the full scope of her manipulation became clear. She thought she was getting revenge on her arrogant brother-in-law, but she'd actually been a pawn in a much larger game orchestrated by people who saw her as expendable. Ms. Winters was never intended to survive the boat incident, Torres revealed. The original plan called for the vessel to collide with shipping traffic in the main channel, eliminating all witnesses to the conspiracy. Ms. Steinberg would then claim that Michael had deliberately murdered his sister-in-law and 20 innocent guests, seeking damages that would total over $50 million. The only reason the plan failed was Michael's immediate call to the Coast Guard and his sophisticated tracking system, which allowed rescue teams to locate the drifting boat before it reached the shipping lanes. Judge Vasquez called for a brief recess as bailiffs placed Gloria Steinberg under arrest. As she was led away in handcuffs, she turned to Karen with a look of pure contempt. "You stupid woman," she hissed. "You were supposed to die with the rest of them." When court reconvened, Prosecutor Sterling stood to address the jury with unprecedented humility. Ladies and gentlemen, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Michael Rodriguez. We apologize to Mr. Rodriguez, his family, and this court for pursuing a case bill on fabricated evidence and perjured testimony. The jury deliberated for exactly 12 minutes before returning a verdict of not guilty on all counts. As Judge Vasquez read the verdict, Michael felt 18 months of terror and uncertainty finally lift from his shoulders. But the real justice was just beginning. Karen Winters pled guilty to 23 felony charges, including conspiracy, fraud, perjury, and reckless endangerment. She was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution to Michael and the Coast Guard. Gloria Steinberg was convicted of conspiracy, witness tampering, evidence fabrication, and insurance fraud. Her law license was permanently revoked, and she received a 12-year federal sentence. The investigation into her firm revealed dozens of similar schemes dating back over a decade. Monica and Rebecca Winters, who had cooperated with investigators, received probation and community service. Rebecca's testimony proved crucial in uncovering the full scope of Steinberg's operations. 6 months after the trial, Michael stood on the deck of his boat, now permanently moored in a new marina with upgraded security. The Coral Gables Yacht Club had not only restored his contract, but had awarded him an additional $10 million project. Impressed by his grace under pressure and his commitment to his community, Sarah joined him at the rail, holding a letter that had arrived that morning. It was from Karen, writing from federal prison. She says she's sorry, Sarah said quietly. She says she never meant for things to go so far. Michael took the letter and, without reading it, tore it into small pieces that scattered on the evening breeze. Some things can't be forgiven with an apology, he said, but they can be overcome with truth. As the sun set over Biscayne Bay, painting the sky in the same brilliant colors that had witnessed the beginning of their nightmare, Michael realized that sometimes the greatest victory isn't avoiding betrayal, it's surviving it with your integrity intact. The real lesson of his ordeal wasn't about boat security or family dynamics. It was about the dangerous power of resentment and the lengths some people will go to tear down what others have built. But it was also about the power of truth, the importance of evidence, and the reality that justice, though sometimes delayed, eventually finds its way to those who seek it with patience and principle. Karen had wanted to teach Michael a lesson about sharing. Instead, she learned a far more costly lesson about the price of envy, manipulation, and the company you keep when you let bitterness guide your choices. The boat rocked gently in its slip, secure in its lines, watched over by cameras, and protected by the truth that had ultimately set everyone free, everyone except those who had chosen lies over justice and revenge over redemption. If this story of justice and betrayal captivated you, make sure to subscribe for more incredible true crime courtroom dramas. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest investigations into the shocking cases that prove truth really can be stranger than fiction.